But the CIF, so that's the governing body of the Southern California sports schools, right? They're postponing fall sports. So that means that when your kid who's been doing summer lifting all summer long with their high school football team, who expected high school football to be starting training camp about right now, and your kid who you're saying, well, you know, he's committed to this school, but he really wants to go to this school. And if he doesn't play the season, he's not going to have the reps and no one's going to see his huddle tape. It's the same for every sport. I don't even know what all the sports are that play this time of year. I suppose for girls, it's probably volleyball, which is the big high school sport, and high school football. Well, look, NFL can't figure it out. Colleges are not going to be far behind. How the hell could high schools, how could they possibly play not just their own school? You might be able to bubble your own kids and just have practices with your own kids. But how can these kids from this school go to this part of another community, go to another school where they don't know who those kids are, where they've been, what their parents are doing? You just don't know. Listen, I'm a dad who would love to have seen the junior college football season happen. I really would love to see the college soccer season happen. But come on, I'm not going to depend on Conference USA to play women's college soccer when you can't figure out the football thing. I would say many of us underestimated how long this was going to be and how devastating this was going to be. And I'll tell you right now, from the very beginning, my biggest worry was the economy and people are going to stop spending and, you know, everybody's going to be screwed. Dude, we got 2 quarters left to go this year. And no NFL. Well, let me rephrase that. NFL has a problem with their plan. No college football is going to wind up bouncing, I believe. No high school. I mean, the sports and the impact on economics that sports brings, this could be really bloody is all I'm trying to get at. What do you guys think? High school football, done.
I saw a tweet, and I wish I could remember who it was so I give him proper credit. The calendar doesn't mean a single thing either. Just because we're saying pushing to 2021, that has no bearing on the virus. It's not going to reset 2021. Right. So I understand that it sounds nice, like 2021 can't be worse than 2020, but the calendar has no significance in when a virus doesn't care what a number says. The virus is here, and it's going to be there. I think remember I told you guys in March and April, the government is shutting us down 30 days, 2 weeks at a time, because there's no way they're going to tell us we're going to be here for 10 months because you'll freak the hell out. Same thing with high school sports. And it's personally, I think it's the way it should be, but I don't see high school sports happening for this whole school year, not just fall. It would take a significant turnaround for things to change dramatically to have high school sports happen this school year.
Just think about this, though. I forget about sports for a quick moment, okay? You're a mom or dad out there. I have neighbors, and they have young kids. You know, my kids, my daughter who's 14, she goes to a private school. I fought her going to this private school. Wouldn't you know it? Oh, it turned out to be the greatest thing that ever happened because they are they're ready at this private school. The public schools, not so much. But if you're a parent, okay, and you are still not back in your office place and your children can't go to school because the governor has shut down the schools, it's a big drag, dude. Because here's the thing. It's not just the pressure on you, the parent, that while you're trying to work, you got shit going on out there you got to deal with. But it's going to be really, really hard for the kids who are not the world's most motivated to stay on track. I'm telling you, the world, it's like we all push the pause button. Everybody has pushed the pause button. Pause in sports, pause in high school sports, and frankly, pause in school. Like my own kids, I'm like, dude, quit school right now. And I don't mean like my high school age kids because they can handle it because they're girls and they're smart. But like my son, I'm like, dude, quit school right now. Stop taking classes. Get a job. You'll go back to school later. There's no reason right now because if you have a hard time learning in a classroom environment and then they take the classroom environment away from you, some kids may flourish under the online, but I doubt most will. And I know as a parent, most parents are having the same concerns. Like my kids are going to fall way behind. And that, I mean, it's not just sports. We talk about it from a sports angle. I'm telling you, it's so much bigger than just sports.
I agree with you, dude. And if I was a college student, I think I said that back in the day too, like when all this was happening. Like if I'm a college student, I am out. I'm not paying $30,000 to sit in front of my laptop and do something that that honestly, like University of Phoenix is probably more equipped to handle. Like these online schools, the national universities, like you'll get a way more bang for your buck there because that's what they're used to doing. Why am I going to pay $30,000 for a laptop? Why would anybody do that? I 100% agree with you, dude. I would totally just not quit school, but like just be like, yo, I'm out. I'll come back later. Like what's the point?
Especially if you're an athlete. Like if you are an athlete, I would bounce right now from school. I'd say, I'm going to pump the brakes right now. I'm going to withdraw because I don't know what they're going to do about my eligibility. If let's say I'm a senior and I was really counting on this year and I'm registered for classes, but the season doesn't happen, do I still get the season a year from now? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I would bounce right now if I were a college student. Okay.
How about the high school multi-athlete student? You know, the guy that's good, the kid that's good in football and baseball and basketball. You know, like that kid's going to have to make some hardcore decisions coming up this year if sports do happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me say this. I know I dropped out for a second, but I'm back.
Nice.
No one knew. No.
There's not going to be any high school sports. I'm sorry to bust y'all bubble. If you were on the verge of making that university signing you ain't making it, dude. There ain't going to be no sports. There ain't going to be no kids in no classrooms in no high school because it ain't safe. If you want to see a super spreader situation, okay, let these kids play football. Let these kids play basketball. I did an Instagram and a Twitter video on this today. What is you dumb? Are you stupid? Like you can't let this happen. You know what that would mushroom into if you let these kids play football? Then each one of these individual kids goes back to a different place after smashing into another kid from a completely different place. It's too dangerous. It's not worth your child's safety. Think about it for a second. You're going to put your child's life in danger for football.
Or volleyball, but let me throw a question at you. You ready? You're making what I think is a very compelling point, which is why would you let your children do this? But let's think about it on a professional scale. Is the NBA season so life and death important? And I know we're talking about bubbling guys and just certain finite number of people. Is it that important that this season gets finished? That theoretically, okay, a person comes to work at Disney, they prepare food for somebody, that person maybe gets it and then spreads it in the locker room. And then the next thing you know, they're on the court with each other, but they're asymptomatic and they don't even have, a positive test yet, but germs are being spread. I'm just saying, is any of this really that important?
Depends who you ask. Depends who you ask. If you ask Spencer Dinwiddie, he says no because he didn't even show up. If you ask LeBron James, he's like, it's 2020, man. This is the way we're living now. This is we got to do this. So it really just, for me personally, I understand the financial implications of a league, and they're a private organization. So for them, it's important. We got to finish this thing off. We got to get what we can, and it's good practice for next year because, like I told you guys, the calendar don't mean anything. When they start the season up in December, they're probably going to be in a bubble again. So I think for the NBA to get it right now, get the money now that they can now, and get ready for next year, it's a big deal, and it is important. Now, if you're taking away tests from the public, which they are, and you're taking away resources from the public, now you're having like a moral dilemma there, and that's where it comes down to.
Let's discuss that for a second, because I'm glad you said that. If you are a private organization, it is your right to purchase those tests and to test your workforce. If you work at McDonald's and the owner of your franchise doesn't make sure that all my people are tested every day, that's on the owner of that franchise. I don't like how people are trying to paint sports into a bad light by saying let me give you tests.
But wait, let me just real quick, time out. Your point is right on, right? So okay, the NBA's got tests, yes?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Let me put it in sports, John, so that you don't make the example of McDonald's, but here, and I'm coming right back to you. The Del Mar racetrack had a whole bunch of jockeys that all tested positive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they canceled racing, and racing won't resume until theoretically this upcoming Friday. Now, if you're a jockey who did not test positive, but there are all these jockeys who did, do you know that when they come back to work after 10 days, they will not be tested again? They even with a positive test, okay, they will have been sent away, quarantined. When they come back, assuming their fever isn't high, and they're not showing symptoms, assuming they're not showing symptoms, they will not be retested, the jockeys. So think about that. Like one sport, basketball, is going all in on the testing. And one sport, I'm just using it locally here, and it's not as big a deal, but horse racing, so it's not McDonald's. Rather than them saying we have to test every guy, they're relying on their health professionals through Scripps Hospital. And the people at Scripps Hospital are saying, look, if a nurse has a positive test and 10 days later comes back and is asymptomatic, we don't even test them again. That's what is being said. So, John, back to what you were saying, please pick it up. I mean, you see how crazy this is?
It makes no sense that you wouldn't even test them when they came back, because within that 10 days, were they quarantining in a house full of people? Because a lot of these jockeys probably can't even afford to live on their own. I mean, obviously the big ones can, but they got families, they got kids, they have other responsibilities. So what's to say that they didn't break that seal and go on a run or go to the store or whatever the case may be? You cannot get upset at a private organization who secures tests for their own employees while the government, the Trump administration, is cutting funding for CDC and testing. So who are you really upset with? I don't like it when people come out and say, oh, these leagues are taking on a test. No, they're not. They're purchasing tests. Just like the government should be purchasing tests for all these people who need it in Texas, for all the people who need it here in California, for all the people who need it in Florida. That's their responsibility. Just like it's these owners' responsibility to take care of the health and wellness of their athletes. Period. That's their responsibility.
I think the NBA is just in a different situation because, like you said, we talked about how the NFL in March was like showing off, right? Like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. Well, in March and April, and remember, Adam Silver wouldn't even comment on what was happening. He's like, we're not doing anything until May 1st, and then we'll go from there. And then he opened his mouth by saying, we will not take tests away from the general public if there's a shortage. So that's the only reason I bring up the NBA. It's because the own commissioner just put his own foot in his mouth. So I am with you, John, that a private company has the right to do whatever they want with testing and getting the results back way quicker. The shortcomings of a local government should not be like frowned upon by a private company because they have the ability to do it better than the government. Like, so that's a moral conversation. That's why I didn't say, is it right or wrong? That's an opinion. There is no answer right or wrong. I mean, that's just an opinion. But Adam Silver saying, we're not going to take away tests from the general public. And then you're in Florida where it's a giant hotspot and you're taking away tests from the general public. I mean, you just put your own foot in your mouth. That's all he did.
Well, but if he's purchasing those tests, what's to say that those tests that he purchased were earmarked for sale, for private sale? Because just like they're selling them to the government, they're selling them to private organizations because it's a business. It's a profitable business at this point.
Yeah, I really don't have the answer or the insight into it, but I can just tell you this, that this whole conversation began with, high school sports and should they come back and will they come back? And as of right now, the governing body, at least here in Southern California, is saying we're not going to be playing football. And you say, okay, well, we're not going to play till 2021. Well, that's under the assumption that there's already going to be a vaccine. And then, by the way, it screws up so many other things. I'm telling you, this is the weirdest part. The world is on pause. If I were a student right now, if I were a high school student, I would withdraw.
By the way, the world,
think about it like this.
But the world isn't on pause. This country is on pause because the world and other places of the world is way more back to normal than we are. England is talking about opening music venues next month. So, like, I understand that it is paused in this country, and without even making a thing, this country's paused, not the world.
Okay, fair enough. But you gotta deal with the cards that you got.
Yeah.
And this is the hand you're dealt, and these are the cards you play. What were you saying, Browner?
Let's talk about this from a ground zero perspective. Your daughter is at Middle Tennessee State preparing to play a soccer season, okay? Don't you want her to have as many tests as she could possibly take to make sure that she's safe and all those around her teammate-wise are safe? How is this? So the university has to figure out a way to get those tests. Now, are they taking tests from the public? I would think not.
It's so interesting you say that.
Alabama going to have 1,000 tests if they need it. LSU going to have 1,000 tests if they need it. Are they taking tests from the general public? I just don't like this perception that it's the professional teams are doing it. If you are going to be making money off playing a sport, you need to protect the people who are going to be taking the field, period.
So they should pay the students this year then because they ain't making money.
Well,
Good luck with that.
I think I think my daughter told me, she's like, hey, the football team took their tests and got their results within a day. We took our tests a week ago and still haven't gotten our results. So I'm like, well, let that be a lesson in
Or priority.
Which sport is which. Okay, hey, listen.
Well, isn't that the general question that we're literally our own questions are answering the major question? If multi-billion-dollar companies are struggling getting started, should a public high school play? The answer is simply no.
Hell no.
Right.